Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting to order for April 13th, 2023. Can I have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Braun?
Here.
Commissioner Pearson?
Here.
Commissioner Warnick?
Here.
Let the record show you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you bow your heads with me for a brief prayer? Father God, I come to you tonight on behalf of our town. Lord, I ask that you watch over our citizens and watch over this elected body. Be with our first responders, as well as our military serving here and overseas. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, consent agenda. Town Administrator, do you have that?
Yes, you have that before you, the town meeting video summary from March 14th, 23. There's a couple other items. This looks a little bit different from what you've seen it before. As we had talked about at our last meeting, we're tentatively looking to have go back to the 2 meetings a month for April and May for the purposes of going through the budget or approving the budget. So you see the Tuesday, April 25th, a budget workshop. It gets a little interesting here, May 9th. Before you tonight, you have that reclassification application for the zoning of 8 Cooper Avenue. That requires a public hearing, that if the ordinance goes tonight the way it could go, then we would have a public hearing on that ordinance change on May 9th. We have also been talking about addressing the constant yield tax rate, which the timing will work out that we can address that on May 9th also as a public hearing. And then at the conclusion of those 2 public hearings, the town could have the town meeting to vote on the disposition of the 2 public hearings. And then May 23rd again is a tentative budget workshop. And then June 13th is a town meeting. And at that point, we would go back to just having the 1 town meeting a month at that point.
Does anyone have any conflicts?
No.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes, thank you. All right, moving forward into public presentations. Tonight, we are swearing in a new commissioner. I've spoken before that public service is a big venture, and it should never be taken lightly. This position will have an impact on your friends and your time, as well as on your family. You will be loved by some and hated by others. You will have to make hard choices that others may not agree with. Tonight, I am appointing a woman who has been raised just outside of Rising Sun in the Calvert area. Her family has been there for over 40 years. She's attended countless meetings. She has knowledge of our town board, as well as the pressing issues that we face. She believes, like me, that the best days for our town are the days ahead. Tonight, I'm honored to put the name forward of Emily Kleiner to fill the Board of Commissioners' open seat. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? The only discussion, go ahead.
I was going to say, I look forward to working with you on the board, and I welcome you aboard.
Thank you.
We are definitely excited to have Emily. Each one of the Board of Commissioners have been able to speak with her and get to know her before we decided on this, and it definitely was a good decision. Hearing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. All right, Emily, we're asking you to come up now, and the clerk of the court will swear you in.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Emily Kleiner, do swear or affirm I, Emily Kleiner, do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful
that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland
and bear true allegiance to the state of
and
Maryland,
support the Constitution
and support the Constitution
and laws thereof,
and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of Town Commissioner
execute the office of Town Commissioner
according to the Constitution
according to the Constitution
and laws of this state.
and laws of this state.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The first 4 lines.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out tonight. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Give us just a moment as we shuffle some chairs and reassign.
You get to sit with the big group now.
The mature people at that end of the table.
Yeah, they leave us down here.
That wasn't a reference to age, that was a reference to behavior.
Come on, how many years have we been sitting at this end? I mean, they even put the
It's like they put the
police
class
chief,
clowns on this end of the
they
table.
put the police chief to try to keep us honest.
Yeah.
It's the beauty and the brains down here.
Yes, exactly.
Gender diversity issues. Separation.
All right. After the swearing in of our new commissioner, I'm going to move forward with making the following appointments to the town's different departments. Serving as Public Safety Commissioner, I'm appointing Augie Pearson to continue in that role. As Parks and Recreation Commissioner, I'm appointing David Warnick to continue in that role. As Water and Sewer Commissioner, I'm appointing Pauline Braun to remain in that position. And Emily Kleiner, our new commissioner, will be in charge of streets and sidewalks. As Vice Mayor, I've asked Augie Pearson to go in that role as Vice Mayor. Can I get a motion to approve the appointments?
So moved?
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you. All right, moving forward into new business. First on the agenda is a non-binding MOU for the Chesapeake Science and Security Corridor Consortium. Town Administrator, did you want to speak for a moment on that? You have served on this previously with a previous mayor?
Yes, so back in 2008, thereabouts, some of you might remember they did the Aberdeen Proving Ground reorganization, phasing out of one of the military bases in New Jersey and combining the two efforts together. And it was a massive lift at that time that was projected to have a significant impact in the region. And this organization, Chesapeake Science and Security Corridor, they were sort of at the forefront through Hartford County's economic development efforts and the Aberdeen Proving Ground to put together basically a consortium of community leaders that would be able to represent their communities. So at that time, Mayor Judith Cox and I served on that committee that was actually overseen by Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown at that time. And we attended a couple of meetings, and if you remember, Commissioner Pearson, I think you remembered very well, they showed the projections of how many people would move to the area and how it would stretch out. Interesting enough, today they had a kickoff meeting again because they're recreating the committee for some initiatives that the mayor will go into. There's about 9,500 civilians associated with the Aberdeen Proving Ground working for Aberdeen Proving Ground. And obviously, an overwhelming majority of them are in Hartford County, but Cecil County has a very large portion of people who work for Aberdeen Proving Ground also. So I'll throw a softball to the mayor. The initiative here, what they're trying to do is, now that they have everybody sort of reorganized, the people that are in New Jersey, now the people who work in, live in New Jersey, who wanted to make the commute to Aberdeen is now less than 0.06% of the total people. So maybe some people are retiring out, whatever, but it's now complete, and this organization wants to expand upon some economic opportunities. One of those, which we threw the town of Rising Sun's name in the hat, was under President Biden. There's an initiative to get the military more involved in biosciences. And Aberdeen Proving Ground wants to be a leader in that area and be able to get into the bioscience area, and they're looking to build a large hub that doesn't necessarily have to be on the same acreage of ground, meaning there could be parts of that hub that come over here into Cecil County. And I know Commissioner Pearson can relate to this. We already know we have a large number of town residents who do work for Aberdeen Proving Ground now. So maybe being able to get a piece of that economic opportunity by having a portion of that hub out here in Rising Sun would be very beneficial.
And you can see some of the goals on the MOU. They include some economic goals that ourselves, the town of Rising Sun, are trying to accomplish, as well as some infrastructure goals, and to coordinate together on job opportunities, as well as objectives on infrastructure, promote, collaborate, and coordinate on economic development strategies for both the corridor and for APG. I know that I have neighbors that work at APG, and we are very happy for them to live in the town of Rising Sun. We also support our military. And again, this is a non-binding MOU, and I think it is something that we should support. So with that, I'm going to move forward with a vote in support of the MOU. Can I get a motion to approve the MOU for the Chesapeake Science and Security Corridor Consortium?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion?
Well, I just want to say that this whole thing came about with BRAC. And unfortunately, BRAC never materialized the way we thought back in 2005 it was going to. I mean, we made budgets looking at the potential revenue
Of
that
new
we were
residents and-
going to be receiving. Now, we have land that would be perfect for this. So there's no reason we shouldn't be going right along with this.
And I don't think anyone would say that we shouldn't definitely promote our community, as well as promote the shared goals of the corridor, which you can see before you. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Moving forward into Resolution 2023-03, which is the fee schedule for the amended escrow fees. Town Administrator, do you have that?
Yes, I do. Give me 1 second to bring it up here. What you have before you is Resolution 2023-03. Basically, this is our continuing efforts to ramp up our preparedness for development and our review of stormwater management. And this resolution basically touches on the fact that whenever you're dealing with land development projects, there are very comprehensive plans that are submitted. And I know it's been, over a decade since the town has had any of those types of plans. And again, I always sound like I'm picking on Commissioner Pearson, but he's been here long enough to appreciate the plans that we used to get. We're trying to do it a little bit differently than the way it was done previously. So we're really tightening up on the way plans are being reviewed and who's reviewing those plans. And in this particular case, we would be using our third-party engineering firm to do the plan reviews for land development and stormwater management. And at times, those plan review fees, depending upon the size of the project, can be in the thousands of dollars. And it's not a good business plan for us to be sending those plans to the engineer, incurring a $5,000-6,000 review fee, and then chasing somebody down for a period of time to try to get reimbursed for that. So it is industry standard in local government to charge basically escrow fees at the beginning of these projects. So what you have before you is basically an amendment to our fee schedule that would require an applicant at various stages of the land development process to be setting aside escrow fees for the town. Some caveats we put in there is that when they use, once they reach a ceiling of 75% of the escrow fee being spent, they have to reimburse that back up to the starting balance, so that we're never inadvertently running short on that money and chasing people down to get the bills paid. At the end of a project, any unused escrow fees would be returned to the applicant there. The other thing we're doing is, and I know we've all felt very strongly about this, one of the reasons why the town of Rising Sun is able to keep its tax rate stable for so long is that we have a philosophy of charging the people who require the service the appropriate fees to cover the cost of providing those services. So you're going to see very clear language in this resolution in the fee structure, for instance, that talks about inspections. And when we're paying that third-party agency to do those inspections, we want to make sure that they're doing what they're being paid to do and that we are tracking those properly. So like all the other fee schedules you've gotten over the last 2 months, we're charging administrative fees for us to be able to look at those, properly record them, make sure that everything's being done the way it's supposed to be done. Otherwise, the taxpayers of Rising Sun would basically be subsidizing all of that administrative cost. So I don't think we could ever get 100% of the administrative costs covered completely, but we're making a lot of headway into doing that. So if you are good with this concept, I can read the boilerplates of the resolution into the minutes.
Yes, please.
I have a question before we get
Yes.
started. These fees are in addition to the performance bond that they have to put up for any development?
Yes, they are.
They're not replacing, they're in addition.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're basically apples and oranges, to your point.
Right.
Those would be covered under a public works agreement. And so you know, those fees are not gonna be in a fee schedule, they're
No,
gonna be
they're
in a
gonna-
public works
Right.
agreement. Yep. And just to close that loop, the dollar amount that they would pay would be a percentage that's spelled out in the land development code, a percentage of what their cost is at that time to put the streets, the sidewalk, the sewer, and the water in there.
Again, given some history where those bonds weren't quite fulfilled, I just want to make sure that there's no miscommunication or misthinking here.
I'm sort of saying this jokingly, and you know where I'm going, The only miscommunication was that at that time, the town attorney who was providing service to the town was actually the developer. So instead of putting 110% in the performance bond document, he would drop the one off, and we were only getting 10% of a performance bond on it. So that's easy to avoid happening again, so. Town of Rising Sun Resolution 2023-03,
Calvin, just to
Yes.
rephrase that, that was before our time.
yes, Before.
No,
Well, besides all.
yeah. Town of Rising Sun Resolution 2023-03, fee schedule amendment, fees related to land development and stormwater management plan review escrow fees. Skip the first couple boilerplates. Whereas Chapter 9 titled Finance, Taxation, Business and Trade of the town's Code of Ordinances contains Article 6 titled Establishment of a Town Fee Schedule, which provides for the creation of a town fee schedule established by resolution and amended from time to time by the mayor and commissioners. Whereas the town's current fee schedule contains Section 5 titled Annexation, Land Development and Zoning Fees, which provides for the establishment of fees associated with the development of land or renovation of properties that creates the need for an additional connection to the town's sewer and or water infrastructure. And whereas the mayor and commissioners have passed ordinance 2023-01 titled Stormwater Management Code, in which the town will now act in the place of Cecil County in the review, approval, and inspection of stormwater management plans for projects within the incorporated limits of the town of Rising Sun as provided for in the state of Maryland stormwater management regulations pursuant to the environmental article Title 4, Subtitle 2, Annotated Code of Maryland, 2009 replacement volume. And whereas the mayor and commissioners also wish to streamline the entire land development process and to bring fees associated with those services in line with industry standards while making sure that any cost associated with the management of these services is borne by the applicant seeking development by way of fees reflected in the town's fee schedule and not the general tax revenues collected by the town. Therefore, be it enacted and resolved that the mayor and commissioners of the town of Rising Sun are modifying Section 5 titled Annexation, Land Development and Zoning Fees of the town's existing fee schedule by restructuring the layout of the fees for easier review. And you guys should have in there the language that's actually gonna be in the fee schedule here is under land development, you see sketch plan. I'm not gonna go into all of them, but you can see where you have $3,000 that somebody has to put up in escrow fees for single lot and minor subdivisions. A major subdivision would be $5,000 of escrow fees, with the funds to be replenished to the starting balance upon use of 75% of the funds. Unused funds to be returned to the applicant upon project completion. And then you have, under major subdivisions, the same concept, the dollar amount's a little bit higher. And then on preliminary reviews, same subject concepts, but the dollar value's a little bit higher. On the final plan review, again, same concept, dollar values relatively the same. And then we want to make sure we're covering all the inspections that have to be done. So here on number 9, you see where if we're going to pay the third-party engineer to go out and do an inspection, they're going to provide us with a report. So we want to make sure that that is being documented properly. To go back to Commissioner Pearson's point, we had an issue with inspections in the day also of who, the fox guarding the hen house, so to speak. So again, if we're gonna do our due diligence to make sure this is correct, we're gonna make sure that the applicant is the one that's paying for that administrative time. So we're also showing how we're gonna collect escrow fees up front for the third-party engineer to go out and inspect the road as it's being built and the sidewalks as they're being laid. and the stormwater piping and the sewer and the water, we're gonna get those escrow fees up front. And then under stormwater management review, which sometimes can be related to a subdivision, but it doesn't always have to be related to a subdivision. That's why the fees are tracked here differently, but again, it's all the same concept, broken down into single lot and minor subdivision and major subdivisions. The concepts are all the same through the document. So that's basically the gist of it.
Resolution 2023-03, could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded, any discussion?
I had a question. You mentioned the industry standard for the fees.
Yes.
And, what is the industry, is there, an association that's referenced for it, just so that I can bounce it off?
No.
No? Okay.
It's typically, municipalities are basically free to charge whatever they want within reason. And you will hear this as we see more development. A lot of municipalities will, quite frankly, when the development community starts to complain that it's too hard to develop, you will see some municipalities that will basically try to fast track it and make it easier. And I always look at it as a pendulum. It works for a period of time until you get a bad developer, and then it swings back the other way. You see it all the time. So our fees are basically in line with the other communities in and around Cecil County, Delaware. We got these fees in part through our town attorney, who represents several different municipalities, and our engineering firm that represents several municipalities.
Thank you.
All right, is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you, Town Administrator. Moving forward into ordinance 2023-03, which is the 8 Cooper rezoning classification. Town Administrator, do you have that?
Yes, so in your packet, you should have an application from a gentleman who just recently bought the Goodies property down at Cooper and, I'm drawing a blank. Crothers, Cooper and Crothers there. That building has been sitting vacant for a while. For the benefit of the board and some people in the audience who might remember this, back in early 2022, the town went through a comprehensive rezoning exercise, whereas as part of developing a comprehensive plan, which is basically a business plan for a municipality, the Planning Commission, after 2 or 3 years of working on it, came up with what are recommendations to change the zoning designation of certain properties throughout the town of Rising Sun. We talked about this before. You don't want to have mixed match of zoning in a particular area because it doesn't create cohesiveness. And when you go down Main Street towards the pond, heading out of town, there were like 4 different types of zoning covering about 25 to 30 properties. So part of the exercise was to try to get a lot of that zoning similar so that you have cohesiveness in the way your town and your businesses and your uses flow. This one particular property was scheduled to be zoned as limited commercial. But the property owners at that time were concerned that that would limit their ability to sell the building. Now, truth be told, it was zoned light industrial. And we tried to make the argument that no one is really going to truly want to operate a light industrial business in that portion of town. Even though way back in the day it was operated that way, it doesn't mean when you start building residential houses around it that your residents are going to take too kindly to the type of businesses that you see coming in light industrial. Furthermore, the previous business that was in there was actually not operating as light industrial. They were operating as more of a light commercial. They were what we call a legal non-conforming use. So it made sense to change the zoning to that. They didn't want us to do it. We agreed to not do it, but we warned them that if you ever try to move in a new business, you might have to go through and get various special exceptions and variances to be able to operate the ideal type of business in that area. So you fast forward to now, the property was sold, the new owner wants to open up retail and those types of businesses, but they're not permitted in that zoning district. So the applicant had a choice. They could go before the Planning Commission and the Board of Appeals and get variances and special exceptions to let those businesses come in, but there's a caveat to special exceptions and variances. When you are a non-conforming use, just because you get a one-time special exception to put a use in there doesn't mean that you can expand upon that use to a greater density. Or if you get a special exception or a variance to do something that makes you a non-conforming use, you can't make it worse. So the example I always give is if you have a building that is currently 40 feet tall, and the zoning code says it can only be 35, but you get a variance to be at 40, even though you come back with a great idea of dressing up the rooftop and maybe putting a different roof on it, and it makes it now 42 feet high, just because you got a variance to be at 40 doesn't mean that variance covers you for 42. And so in those scenarios, a property owner, every time they wanted to flex and think of this building as it's going to have multiple tenant spaces in it, so it can always be flexing and changing in the types of uses, this applicant would have ran the risk of always having to come back and get variances and special exceptions. It made more sense to just get the zoning change to limited commercial one time, and then that opens up a whole Pandora's box of opportunity in which to develop the building. And so they submitted an application. You have an ordinance tonight that all we would do would be read it into the minutes. We then have to do some advertisements for this and hold a public hearing that, if you remember, I spoke about in the consent agenda, at which time the public would be invited to come in and speak for or against, or to hear why the applicant is making the zoning change, and then at that time the elected body can vote on it. So if you would like, I'll read in the boilerplate.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you have ordinance 2023-03. An ordinance of the Town of Rising Sun, Cecil County, Maryland, amending the zoning classification of certain properties as recommended in the town's comprehensive plan is defined below, and to repeal any and all other ordinances and parts of the ordinances in conflict therewith. So the first couple boilerplates talk all about the state law of how zoning, how you change zoning codes. So it's sort of redundant, and I sort of just explained that. So I'm going to skip by that, and I'm going to get to some of the more salient points here. And I'm going to start at the last whereas. Whereas while addressing proposed changes for the land use designations for the town's comprehensive plan, changes in the existing designation of zoning classifications on properties within the entire town of Rising Sun were reviewed and discussed based in part on the following criteria: population change, adequacy of public facilities, present and future transportation patterns, compatibility with existing and proposed development for the area, fiscal impact of the town government, and the suitability of the property in question to the uses permitted under the existing and proposed zoning classification in the overall comprehensive plan of the town of Rising Sun. Whereas the Mayor and Commissioners previously proposed ordinance 2022-02, which recommended a phased approach to updating the town's zoning map and included a property located in 8 Cooper Avenue as part of those proposed zoning changes. However, the property owner requested that the property be removed from consideration of those changes, of which the mayor and commissioners agreed to, and proceeded with the adoption of a modified ordinance 2022-02 that did not include the proposed rezoning of 8 Cooper Avenue. Whereas 8 Cooper Avenue is now under new ownership, and the new owner now wishes to have the property zoned in accordance with the previously recommended changes. And whereas this requested zoning change was put forth before the Town of Rising Sun's Planning Commission on Thursday, April, and it's left blank for a reason, as required, and comments on this proposed rezoning were provided to the mayor and commissioners for their review and consideration of this ordinance. Whereas the mayor and commissioners gave public notice as required by law and held a public hearing on blank 2023 to receive public input and comment. And I'm going to jump to the rest of it. And let me just say, we're required to structure the ordinance that way to show people that the legal process is going to be followed going forward. So the Planning Commission is the next group that has to discuss this and make a recommendation. And some of the things I'm reading in there are because the state law is very clear on what has to be in there. So in this particular case, the property here is described as 8 Cooper Avenue. It's tax map 10B, it's parcel number 94, and the tax ID is 06-023975. It's 1.04 acres. When you look at the property image, you can see where it's located at Crothers, the corner of Crothers and Cooper. The current use of the property, it's a vacant warehouse and storefront. The existing zoning is light industrial district. The proposed new zoning would be LC limited commercial. This is important. The state law requires us to read that the reason for the zoning change, the property was previously operating as a low-intensive commercial use and not as a typical LI light industrial use. The current zoning of LI could promote future occupancies that could cause less than desirable operations and land use in close proximity to residential neighborhoods. Although the previous occupancy of the property was a non-conforming use, any attempts to continue this type of use in the current LI district would not be permitted under new ownership unless a special exception were approved. It is important to note that most of the other non-residential properties along West Main Street are currently zoned limited commercial LC and are operating in that manner, with 8 Cooper Avenue being one of the outliers. The town's comprehensive plan recommends that where a range of light commercial and central commercial and/or light industrial land uses abut, such as along East and West Main Street and Cooper Avenue, the town should consider adjusting the zoning designation of the various parcels into a single zone to create a district or a node. Adjusting the zoning of 8 Cooper Avenue from LI to LC will support the assembly of similar type uses in the same general area. The change of zoning will help protect the area from the more intensive LI zoning uses, but still allow the types of businesses and more practical use of the land to create a more compatible, harmonious, and coordinated flow of zoning along Main Street and portions of side streets that are part of the commercial application in the area. So that's the ordinance. We've read it into the minutes.
It'll set,
We'll proceed forward with the advertisement, go before the Planning Commission, and come back to you folks on May 9th for a public hearing.
thank you, Town Administrator. Moving forward into citizens' input, would anyone like to speak this evening? As soon as, I know you guys have questions, so as soon as our meeting's done, I'll get with you and we'll get some questions answered for you. All right? All right, moving forward into staff reports. Town Administrator.
A couple things. We, on a whim, put in an application to Will Mapco to get a planning grant. As you know, the traffic flow in the town of Rising Sun is not the greatest in the world. And we have always talked about connector roads, even going back to when Commissioner Wardick was on the Planning Commission, and Commissioner Pearson, we've talked about doing connector roads and trying to figure out a way to make these developments more conducive. We submitted that to Will Mapco, and it looks like they're going to provide the funding for a third-party entity to come in here and develop some strategic strategies on where we think some of the development is likely to occur, and what we can now educate our planning commission to articulate during the reviews of the way they want these developments to look. So it hasn't been made official, but based upon the inquiries that I'm getting from Will Mapco as of today, it does appear that we are definitely in the running for getting that grant. In addition to that, we're also in the running for the Maryland Department of the Environment Operators Grants. I always like to bring that up as a reminder because people know the trials and tribulations the town went through with the lagoon when it was in non-compliance and we were being cited and fined for not properly treating wastewater. You get these operational grants when you are treating at least to the required limits or above or under those limits, whichever way you want to look at it. So we've been notified that we're definitely in the running for that grant money, and this will be the 6th year in a row that we would get basically some money from the state to help operate the sewer plant. It's not a whole lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but it's a testament to how far the town has come in correcting the wastewater treatment issues that we had. The other thing, next month we're going to be submitting to you an ordinance to make amendments to our land development code in the way we are handling the land development application process. Earlier in the presentation, I talked about some communities go back and forth on whether they want to streamline the process or make it more rigorous to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And we're sort of in between on that. So right now, our land development code requires requires a tentative sketch plan, a preliminary plan, and a final plan. We're going to be proposing that we create a voluntary administrative technical review submission, a tentative voluntary sketch plan, and then concept, preliminary, and final will still be required. Now, that's not really going to elongate the process unless the developer uses what I think is good judgment and gets before the appropriate people early in the process and spends their money wisely. As you've always heard me say, a developer knows they're going to spend $750,000 developing a project. They will do essentially anything you want them to do if you get to them early on in the process. It's when it's at the 11th hour and you change the rules on them that they really start to fight you on having already spent money. So by creating the administrative as a voluntary and the tentative sketch plan, it gives a good developer the foresight to say, hey, let me get it in front of these people and bounce some ideas off them before I actually start spending money. So that's something that we're pretty excited about that we want to submit to you. I want to thank Judy and her team. As part of the budget process, we have a lot of RFPs that are out there. We're optimistic that we might see at least a stabilization in the amount of what we pay for gas at the water plant in the gas tank, copy machines, trash collection, and the sewer plant. We're going to put the sewer plant out to RFP also. One of the other things I wanted to float to you as part of the RFP for the gas, we're actually seriously considering just going with a fleet management card for all the vehicles that need fuel. There are some pros and cons to that. Number one, you want to make sure that you're getting gas stations that are in the geographic area so you don't have people having to travel too far. But also, the positive side of that is we already know that we have a fuel tank that's down by our drinking wells. And, you know, we can't control what the town did back in the day, but we wouldn't let anybody install a fuel tank on a well, over top of a well now. And we've always talked about moving that fuel tank over to the wastewater treatment plant, but why not just eliminate it altogether, especially if we can get some competitive prices through a fleet management card. So that'll all come out through the budget process. The other thing that I want to remind everybody of, we're 1 year closer to that drop dead date on that MS4 requirement, where we have to have basically $1.75 million in hand to deal with that unfunded mandate from the state regarding MS4. Now, yes, we submitted grant applications, got very creative, submitted some grant applications that we might get lucky and that will all take care of itself. But if it doesn't, we are facing a $1.75 million expenditure by December of 2025. The other thing that we're going to be coming to you hopefully next month is you're familiar with the fact that we already charge impact fees for anyone who wants to connect to the water and sewer system. And your impact fees are typically used for your end destination, what you have to do. So once a sewer plant starts to get to 10 to 15, 20 years of age, you start to have big repairs that have to be done that can be done based upon or are needed because of wear and tear or because of additional people that are connecting to the system. So you charge an impact fee that basically makes a statement that all the residents that have been paying sewer and water fees over the last couple of decades, a new developer doesn't get to come in and get the benefit of all that money that was generated for the wastewater treatment plant. They have to basically pay a fair share up front. It's almost like joining a country club, that if people were members of a country club for 20 years and they put a big addition on the country club, the membership fees are what pay for that. When I come along to join the country club, I should get all the benefits of all those new amenities without paying some type of additional membership fee to offset that. So that's what impact fees are. But the one area that we're lacking in is, what about our sewer lines that need to be replaced? What about our sewer lines that are too small? What about our water lines that need to be replaced and interconnections? What about having to build new water towers in the future for additional capacity? We're going to be coming to you with an infrastructure expansion fee that will not be charged to the existing taxpayers, but it will be charged to the developers that are looking to build. Again, this is an industry standard concept that we want to get ahead of the curve and start implementing that, so that when we have to build a new water tower, we're not as likely to be coming back to our existing customers saying, we need to raise more money for a water tower, or we need to raise more money to improve the sewer conveyance. So we had a full agenda tonight. The next town meeting's gonna have a full agenda too, with some initiatives that we're trying to move forward. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Town Administrator. Chief?
I'll try to be quick with the things I have. First, we talked about the graduation of Stephen Moore, our newest officer, a few weeks ago. He is in the OJT kind of portion of the training, where he is out in the field actually putting to practice all the things that he learned in the academy. He's doing well at this point and should be complete that within a next month or so. We also spoke about the vehicles problem we've had trying to locate and replace aging vehicles and equipment. I have some good news. We're approximately 30 days away of having one vehicle in our hands to replace what we have that is pretty much failing. The second vehicle is still in the wind. I'm not sure what Ford has done with the process, but I can't seem to get much out of them, and the search is on for other companies to provide vehicles. Lastly, I received numerous complaints of speeding on Pearl Street and many of the other roads in town. Pearl Street and Mount Street fall within the geographical layout for speed cameras. We've talked about this in the past before with some of the previous boards, and it didn't go too well. But what I'm going to do is have another study done of those two roadways to see if it will, see if they qualify for speed enforcement cameras to try to reduce the number of speeding vehicles on those two roadways. I also gave you the police blotter for the last month since the meeting schedule has changed. It's a little bit heavier. One thing that does stand out in there was a cutting on South Walnut. Two individuals who occupied the same home got into an altercation. One stabbed the other. We did make an arrest in that case, and that subject is off the street and probably won't return to our community because he is not supposed to be in this country. So that's the end of my report unless there's some questions.
Thank you, Chief. Moving forward into the mayor's report. My report is,
To the assistant.
oh, sorry, Judy. I
That's
skipped
okay.
over you, sorry.
Well, I will try, if you look, you have financials as well as cash flow projections. I'm not going to go over those. I will tell you that in my analysis, I didn't see anything that needs to be brought up to you. We do have, dumpster day is going to be this Saturday. Just want to remind everybody that they can bring, bulk items and dispose of those free of Public Works. You just need someone to offload for you. The things that we're working on right now, Public Works is out in the community doing cleanup. If you notice, they've cleaned out a lot of the overgrowth at the church, got mulch down. They're going to get flowers and everything out for the parade on Saturday.
Nice.
Got some new software for the land development program that we're getting integrated and ready to start training on for the folks who'll be using that application. And my team, I really am proud of the way that they handle the customers now. We're 70% auto bill. When we bill, we send out an email with their bills, which has really helped us a lot. And they're handling about 400 to 500 calls a month now.
Thank you, Judy, and we certainly thank the Public Works team for all that they do for our community, and especially getting ready for the Little League Parade. Moving forward into the mayor's report, as many of you know, the beginning of April started off with quite a storm. Many developments in our community, as well as mine, incurred storm damage, primarily from hail. I wanted to let our citizens know to be wary of those storm chasing companies that come in, that are from out of state, that do a quick fix and then they leave. The town administrator posted a very informative post regarding those types of companies and how to work with your insurance company. I encourage you to visit our town Facebook as well as the town administrator's Facebook for more information on that. The Rising Sun High School softball team did a dugout dedication. We donated some funds to them for the building of their dugouts. They also included us in a beautiful plaque that is on the side of the dugouts now, thanking the town of Rising Sun for their commitment and partnership. And we certainly wish all of the Rising Sun athletes a great season this year. Last but not least, I was appointed by Governor Wes Moore. He contacted me and asked if I would serve on the Critical Area Commission for the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays. I was approved by the Maryland Senate. The next step is to be sworn in at the Circuit Court. That'll happen sometime in the next few weeks. Last but not least, our Little League Parade is this Saturday. Chief, do you have a time for that?
Parade starts at 10. Look for road closures to happen prior to that.
And we've already posted the road closures and
Yes.
informed those businesses about that,
Correct.
correct? All right, perfect. All right, moving forward into commissioners' comments. Commissioner Braun.
I have no report.
Commissioner Kleiner.
I have no report.
Commissioner Pearson.
Oh, you got to me. Couple of unique things. First of all, today I was at the exit of Summerhill, and a guy coming down Pearl Street from 276 was clocked at 41 miles an hour. So there is a problem there. People are getting out now. Calvin, I couldn't find it, but do we have an ordinance that you have to clean up behind your dog?
Yes,
I was looking for it vigorously and could not find it. If your dog uses the bathroom on the sidewalk, please clean up after him. First of all, other dogs are now are walking, and if your dog happens to have a communicable disease, the potential for other dogs to get it, but more importantly, people step in it. That's enough. There is a property that adjoins Veterans Park, and the owner has complained to me about the youth destroying their property, thinking it's the town's property. I just want to remind people, you can't drink in the park. You're not expected to leave your trash in the park. This is primarily young people, so please, please be cognizant of other people's property. And the last thing, I was contacted by a local bus contractor about East Cherry Street. Several times recently, his buses have had to be rerouted because they could not get down East Cherry Street. Now, we tried dealing with this and nothing's happened. So I would like to make a motion that we erect signs on the south side of East Cherry Street that is facing basically Bob Ford's Hall and opposite the repair shop, that from 7 to 9 there will be no parking, from 2 to 4 there will be no parking, and from 9 to 2 there will only be 30-minute parking. I feel that if we don't do something, the county will come to us, and then we will be forced to do something. Because if buses can't get down, then that creates a problem for the children. So that's my motion.
Town administrator, can we get have, some insight? I mean, obviously, we've talked about this issue before. Do you have any more insight into it, or do we need to move forward with a formal resolution
This
at our
is
next
the-
town meeting?
And this is East Cherry Street
This is-
from between 270.
Where one of the
between Queen
businesses
Street
is.
and Walnut.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure which one, but we either have to do it as an ordinance or a resolution.
Okay.
So we could do it at the, we had the meeting on the 25th, we could expedite it and introduce it as a emergency ordinance.
please.
Is that
Or-
okay?
or resolution.
I'm not sure if it's a resolution or an ordinance.
Either
one.
or.
Yeah,
Okay.
But this is now a safety issue, and
okay.
And Commissioner Pearson, I'll be talking with you and Commissioner Warnick about that property and the issues that we've had with
Okay.
it. I've talked in length to Judy about that as well as Public Works, and we're working on a resolution.
okay,
Hopefully that'll be.
that's all I have, thank you.
You bringing that up reminds me, we do have a vandal though that is going in and putting graffiti all over the park, and it is extremely nasty.
Yes,
We clean it up, we're watching it as closely as we can,
and then they do it again.
yes. So,
Chief,
I've increased patrols in that area. I'm also looking into cameras for the park, seeing how quickly we get cameras into the park to give us an extra set of eyes.
yes, and it certainly helps that we have that hot spot so that we'll be able to potentially get cameras. That's something we've all talked about in the past of potentially getting. Moving forward, Commissioner Warnick.
I have no report.
All right. You can see upcoming town events as well as upcoming holidays. Trash, recycling, and yard waste. Don't forget, you can go to our dumpster day, which is this Saturday. Just make sure that you have your ID, that you are a town resident. Is there anything else to come before the board this evening? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.